Namaste, everybody. Welcome to the 13th Indic Samvad. This time, the Indic Samvad is on leadership insights from Indic Psychometric Assessment. Has been our practice. We will start with an invocation. May I request all of you to close your eyes and follow the invocation. Om Sadgurubhyo Namah. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Once again, welcome everybody. The Institute of Indic Wisdom, IIW, is very glad to bring to you today an Indic Samvad on leadership insights from Indic Psychometric Assessment. This is the first time we are having a Samvad on the area of psychometric assessment based on Indic wisdom. The Institute of Indic Wisdom, to give you an overview, we focus on contemporizing Indic wisdom traditions and the insights and nuggets that are present in this vast repertoire, and to contemporize it for modern challenges in management, leadership development, human development, organization development, and the adjacent areas. Our focus areas are applied Indic psychology, applied Indic leadership, and applied Indic organizational design. And we have a framework where our values are based on four principles of Dharmam, Purnam, Tattvam, and Ananda. I will not go into those details. We are incorporated as a non-profit in the US with concurrent set of activities, leadership development programs, development of coaches, development of people with in the human helping professions, be their healers, psychotherapists. So we cater to this whole section of people who are working with human development, and we focus on inner transformation, immersive inner transformation as the methodology to enable to existing practitioners, whether they are practicing coaches, practicing leaders, practicing healers, to go deeper into themselves and to find a level of inner equilibrium, inner harmony, to make themselves available to their clientele and to their beneficiaries. With this brief introduction, let me get on with today's subject. In today's Samvad, we will be exploring what constitutes Indian psychology, what is the Indian approach to understanding personality, and their underpinnings from the various shastras from our tradition like Samkhya, Vedanta, Bhagavad Gita, and the like. Specifically, today, our expert, Dr. Shilpa Datar, will take us through the Pancha Mahabhuta Theory, the concepts of the Gunas and Doshas, and their combination in terms of what does it entail, classical personality types and traits derived from Panch Mahabhuta Theory, and their development and their deployment for the development of Indic Personality Assessment Scales will be described by her. The relevant examples of applications such as in recruitment, role transition within organizations, managerial as well as leadership development, and for students in terms of career guidance, SWOT analysis for college students and the like. And she will be described, as well as she will take us through a leadership case study of a particular application. We are very fortunate to have with us Dr. Shilpa Datar, who is an academic, who is a psychologist, who has worked on developing scales and instruments, and in his latest venture, she is an entrepreneur as well. It's with great pleasure, let me introduce Shilpaji to you. Shilpaji holds a psychology doctorate and has undertaken specialized courses in Indian psychology, philosophy, and Advaita philosophy in particular. She started off assisting children with learning disabilities, and of which she will be describing her own experience, and moved on to develop a set of psychometric tests to comprehend the personalities of mainstream individuals, be it students of higher education, the 10th standard, the K-12 kind of students, higher education students, and the working professionals. Shilpaji facilitates self-discovery through unique personality profiling founded on Indic model. Her Indic psychometric test has been widely employed worldwide, and the resulting knowledge has been presented both as papers at national and international psychology conferences, as well as they have been published in reputable journals. These tests are used globally for studying Prakriti in various scenarios. Shilpaji is a member of the National Academy of Psychology of India and a life member of the Karnataka Association of Clinical Psychologists. She reviews journals in psychology and Ayurveda based on her multidisciplinary work. She is part of the Committee for Accreditation of Psychometric Testing at IIBP India, and she is also a board member of police recruitment in the Karnataka Police Department. In the academic side, Shilpaji is an adjunct professor of Hindu University of America, where she teaches personality assessment from Indian tradition, and she is also taught psychology for PG students at Bishop Cotton's Women's College in Bangalore. She was honored with multiple awards and accolades, one of the most important one being Veda Brahma Award for excellence in innovation by APNA, which is a US-based organization. She is an entrepreneur. As an entrepreneur, Shilpaji was invited to London by CBFW and Bank of America Merrill Lynch to discuss her work, women's empowerment, and entrepreneurship challenges in India. Her startup is called Swayam Analytics, and it manages a personality strength assessment platform that aids career success, corporate hiring, and leadership development. With this brief introduction, I welcome Shilpaji to take us through her work and enlighten us on the multiple applications that it entails. Over to you, Shilpaji.
Namaste. Thank you so much, Sai Samvad. That was a wonderful introduction. Not sure if I'm worthy of it in front of this august audience that is gathered here today. Thanks to you and the amazing work that you're doing at IIW. May I just share my screen?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yes. Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for having me here with you all today and giving me the opportunity to share my work. I love talking about my work. So thank you very much for this opportunity. So to start off, I want to share a little bit of a story as to why this came up in my life. My son was identified as being dyslexic when he was very young, when he was about 7-8 years old in maybe 97, 98 or so. And the school wanted us to move him to a special needs school. And I was dead against it and I refused that. And I wanted to see how I could help him because I had no idea what dyslexia was. And I set out to understand what dyslexia is. So I started working in a special needs school and I realized that, the tests that they were using to identify children were all foreign tests. They were not relevant to Indians and the adaptations were very poor. And as adults, I was not able to understand the kind of questions that they were asking to categorize the children. So, and I felt that this was very unfair and a huge disadvantage for our children, because I'm sure all of you, everybody knows that the minute a child is put into a special needs school, then they don't have access to good education or a good career. And to see how I could help him as well as other children like him to identify them at a younger age, to give them the necessary support and infrastructure to overcome these difficulties, I set out on this journey. And I went ahead to do my master's in psychology because I was not able to find any information. Google was obviously not so big, and there was hardly any information about dyslexia anywhere. And even in the master's psychology textbooks, there was absolutely nothing, no information. It was just a 3-line paragraph which just mentioned what dyslexia is, which was hardly sufficient. So I wanted to do my PhD in dyslexia, but obviously that was not to be. I started working with, like I mentioned, I was working with children simultaneously to understand. And then as I started working, I realized that this was a very prevalent issue. The tests to assess children were, all foreign, not applicable, and were very badly adapted to Indian scenario. We didn't have anything indigenously made for Indians by Indians who understood the relevance of the context. And I did a little bit of research and I realized that even in the corporate sector across India, the situation was the same. All the tests being used were foreign ones, which were not standardized to Indians and did not have the necessary depth to understand a different psyche. That's where my journey started, and I was very disappointed. I had been very disappointed with the Western models of Jung and Freud, where they studied people who had come into their clinics, studied them, and then said what normal people could behave like. And I felt that that was a flawed way of thinking. And I started looking at, because I was not able to find anything from the Western methodology, I started looking at what India could offer. Because we have a living tradition, the medical tradition, which is Ayurveda, which has come down to us for more than 10,000 years. And I realized that even if they didn't talk about dyslexia per se, there would probably be many allusions to it, which I could use to identify and, pick up from there. But when I started looking at it, I realized that, it had a very deep, very scientific and a very well-developed model of understanding people. And that was the Panch Mahabhuta Theory. And why Indian? Because I also realized along with Ayurveda, when I started working the area, that all the different philosophies of India, be it the Vedas, the Upanishads, the Sankhyan philosophy, yoga, Ayurveda, Puranas, they all talk about human mind, human behavior, how we can understand people, what are the different means to understand people, and so on and so forth. And this I felt was a very well developed and very highly unexplored area for me to, for anyone to understand people, behavior, and personality. So that started off my journey, and that is what Indian psychology is all about, where we study not just the people of India. It's not that, we study people of India and it's not applicable to people outside India. But Indian psychology is the study of people, which has come to us from Indian philosophical thoughts. Like you see on the screen, the Vedas, Upanishads, they all believe in the authority of the Vedas, and they are from the Astika Darshanas. The Nastika Darshanas, which are Jaina, Buddhist, and Charvaka, they don't believe in the authority of the Vedas. So if you look at these texts, there's a huge amount of information about the mind, behavior, and so on. And I started collating all this information, imported them into the domain of psychology. If you look at Sankhyan philosophy, it is atheistic, but still they believe in the authority of the Vedas. Yoga and Ayurveda are completely based on Sankhyan theories. Yoga is in fact called as theistic Sankhya because it adds the layer of Ishvara Pranidhana and talks about the entire philosophy of it. So I collated all this information and started studying them to understand the mind, behavior, and so on. And I realized that India has a very deep and a very well-developed model to understand personality. So that's where my journey started. And to complete a little story about my son, he's qualified as a lawyer, and he's set up his own practice, and he's practicing in Bangalore in his own law firm. So the three methods of understanding people or personality from the Indian psychological method are the Panchakoshas, that is, it has come to us from the Taittiriya Upanishad, which is when it was first talked about. The Tridoshas, which is more or less the Ayurvedic perspective, Samkhya, Yoga, Samkhya and Ayurvedic perspective, as well as the Trigunas, which is all the, all the different schools of thought talk about the Trigunas. And even in Bhagavad Gita, you can see that Sri Krishna talks to Arjuna about how to understand human behavior, human mind, and so on in detail. What is a sattvic manobhava of a person? How does a person with a sattvika manobhava behave? How does one with a rajasika or a tamasika manobhava behave? And all those things are, very deeply and very well elucidated. Both the Tridoshas and the Trigunas are composed of the Pancha Mahabhutas. These are the, very loosely translated, they are the 5 primordial elements which are central to all darshanas. In fact, if you look at the different philosophies from outside India also, if you look at Christianity, you look at Islam, if you look at Zoroastrianism, they all talk about how we are born from dust and then we go back to dust. In fact, I'm sure many of you are following the Chandrayaan and the progress. And in relation to that, if you look at any astronomer, they will all tell you that the entire universe is made up of stars and things like that. And we are all a part of stardust. We are all stardust in the universe. And that's something I found to be very intriguing. And, it gives me goosebumps every time I think about it. To look at the Sankhyan philosophy again, Sankhya believes, again, it's completely atheistic, doesn't believe in God, but it does believe in nature. It believes in, Sankhya is essentially, loosely translated again, it's numbers. So it's very, very mathematical. So it believes in the concept of two, that is Prakriti and Purusha. Purusha is not man, it is something beyond that. And Prakriti is nature. So Prakriti is insentient. And Purusha is the only one which is sentient. It is with the combination of Purusha and Prakriti, which is not sexual union, that the entire universe comes forth. And these two combine with each other and form the Mahat, evolves the Mahat. Mahat is also called as cosmic intellect or Buddhi, cosmic Buddhi. And then this evolves into the 3 kinds of Ahankaras, Sattva, Rajas, and Tamasic Ahankaras. So the Sattvic Ahankara evolves into the 11 senses and the elements and substances, the 5 intellectual and the subjective senses, as well as the 5 objective senses. And then the elements and substances evolve into the 5 subtle elements, the 5 gross elements, and finally the mind. So if you count all this, it becomes 24, the 24 tattvas they are known as. So this is how, and Ayurveda and yoga too believe in this. So the 5 Pancha Mahabhutas are, Pancha is 5, so 5 elements are Akasha, Vayu, Agni, Up, and Prithvi. And loosely translated, they are ether, air, fire, water, and earth. So the Pancha Mahabhutas combine with each other at the physiological level to form the Tridoshas of Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. Kapha is not the phlegm that you have in the chest. It's a completely different. Sanskrit is very confusing. It uses the same words in different connotations and meanings. And the Pancha Mahabhutas again combine with each other at the psychological level to form the Trigunas of Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. So Ayurveda has developed this ideology very fully, where they say that the Tanmatras evolved first, and from the Shabda Tanmatra evolved Akasha Mahabhuta, from which evolved the organ of ear and the sense of hearing. The Sparsha Tanmatra, from Sparsha Tanmatra evolved the Vayu Mahabhuta, from which evolved the organ of skin and the sense of touch. From Agni Tanmatra evolved the Agni Mahabhuta, from which evolved the organ of eye and the sense of vision. The Rasa Tanmatra, from Rasa Tanmatra evolved Up Mahabhuta. Up is also water, from which evolved the organ of taste and the organ of tongue and the sense of taste. The Gandha Tanmatra, from which evolved the Prithvi Mahabhuta, and from which evolved the sense of organ of nose and the sense of smelling. So the reason why I mentioned this is it talks about the entire organ and the organ system's evolution from dust, literally from dust, and how it goes on to evolve into the organ and the organ systems. And each and every cell is supposed to compose of the Vata, Pitta, and the Kapha doshas. Like I mentioned earlier, Akasha and Vayu combine with each other to form the Vata dosha. Fire and water, that is Agni and Up, combine with each other to form the Pitta dosha. And Up and Prithvi, Up is water, and Prithvi combine with each other to form the Kapha dosha. Vata is predominantly Rajasic and also slightly Sattvic. Pitta is predominantly Sattvic with a combination of Rajas and Tamas. We also need to understand that Rajas and Tamas generally always go hand in hand. Wherever there is Rajas, there is always Tamas. Kapha dosha is predominantly Tamasic and also slightly Sattvic in nature. So when we say that a person is predominantly Vata dosha, has a predominance of Vata dosha or Kapha dosha, or has predominantly Rajasic guna or Sattvic guna, it doesn't mean that they don't have the other doshas and the gunas. It is just that one dosha or the guna or a combination also is in predominance. So the tridoshas, though they are three, we can see that we can get a combination of 10 doshas under which we can categorize all people. So you have the Vata, Pitta as well as the Kapha dosha. You also have, Kapha and Vata dosha combination as well as Vata and Kapha dosha. So both of them are not the same. There's always a little bit of a difference between the two. The same way, if you see, you can get 10 different combinations. Similarly, for the Trigunas as well, you have Sattva, Rajas and Tamas as the main, elements over here, as well as you have different combinations leading to 10 different varieties under which people can be classified. Now, the characteristics of Tridoshas have been again explained in both in Ayurveda as well as in other texts also. And these are mentioned over here. These are only the salient characteristics. These do not encompass all the behavior, of course. Same way, we also have the characteristics of Trigunas. Now, the other thing that India is very famous for is that we don't have a Cartesian dichotomy of the body and the mind, where in the West, they don't believe that you need to understand the physiology of the person to understand their mental behavior or their mental psyche. And you don't need to understand the psyche of the individual to know what is it that they are feeling, if they're feeling ill or something at the mind. Though the somatic diseases, psychosomatic diseases have propped up over the last 20-30 years, it's not as well delineated as it is in the Indian scriptures. In India, we don't believe in that. In fact, Ayurveda postulates that the body, mind, and spirit are a tripod, and you cannot have a person with either one of them lacking. Can you imagine somebody without a body? No, we would be scared of that person as being a ghost. In the same way, you can't imagine somebody without a mind. It doesn't happen that way. So in India, we strongly believe that understanding all three are central and critical to understand a person, their personality, psyche, and behavior. So these 7 or 10 types of dosha and guna combinations of people are also known as the type combination or the type theory. We also have, in addition to these, 10 plus 10 types, we also have another 16 classical personality types, which is explained in detail in Charaka and Sushruta Samhita. These 16 classical personality types are a taxonomy. I will take you through that now. And they evolve from one to the other. I've also been able to identify 189 traits that run the entire gamut of human behavior. So 7 types of sattvic, there are 7 types of sattvic personalities, 6 types of rajasic, and 3 types of tamasic personalities that have been identified. Again, between the combinations and permutations of these, this can run the Tridosha, 10 Tridosha, 10 Triguna, and the 16 classical personality types. The combination can run into millions and millions of different types of personalities, and I've been able to plot them all in my work. In the 189 traits, there are 100 sattvic traits, 60 rajasic traits, and 29 tamasic traits that I've been able to identify. So if you look at the 16 classical personality types, the 7, I've indicated these 7 in blue because they are the sattvic, the 7 sattvic types, the Brahma Sattva, Arsha Sattva, and so on. And then comes the 6 rajasic types of personalities. And then the last are the 3 tamasic types of personalities. from the Vanaspatya to Brihaspatya. Brahma Sattva is also known as Brihaspati. So from Vanaspatya to Brihaspatya Sattva, you can see that there's an entire taxonomic way of understanding people. So the Vanaspatya Sattva here means, aura or kaya, or the, the body of the person or the mind of the person. It's not, Sattva again has multiple meanings and connotations. So Vanaspatya Sattva is considered to be the most basic, the most base of all kinds of people, because it's they're the kind of people who don't think much. They're not the intellectual types, certainly. They're very low on thinking capacity. They just follow people around, not capable of taking on highly evolved chores and tasks and so on and so forth. So from there, if you start the way a person can evolve, and leading up to Brahma Sattva or Brihaspati Sattva is the highest that you can see. So this entire taxonomy was what was explained and in the Ayurvedic Charaka and Sushruta Samhita texts. So while developing the items for the scale, for the test that I developed, I identified the different sources, like I mentioned earlier, the Vedas, Upanishads, Bhagavad Gita, Ayurveda, and all that. I pulled out the information from there, all the information related to manas, behavior, people, sattva, rajas, and tamas, and then imported them into the domain of psychology. So I identified statements dealing with, manas and everything, and then those had to be again translated to English. So who am I to say that, this is what the classical texts talk about? So I had to go back to scholars from the different fields of philosophy, Sanskrit, Ayurveda, yoga, psychology, who are, pandits in their own, experts in their own field, and then show them the items, and then ask them to say that this was as per the original. So in this manner, the tests underwent 47 revisions each, as part of the entire process of establishing the validity of the scales. Similarly, I showed all the items for both the Tridosha as well as the Triguna tests. I showed it to the scholars, and once their approval was gained, then the items were shown to 5th standard government school children in Bangalore to ensure that the language was simple, so simple that even a 5th standard child could understand it. An Ayurvedic doctor was also present when we started doing the pilot study. So it underwent about 7 or 8 rounds of pilot studies to ensure that we are on the right track. Even to finalize the way the questions had to be presented to get the right kind of answers that we wanted and not get mixed up. It was we underwent so many rounds of pilot studies. So during that, to ensure that this is really assessing Prakriti, because essentially what we are doing, assessing the body, mind, as well as the ethical aspect of the individual, is to assess the Prakriti of the individual as per the Ayurvedic and the yogic injunctions. So I requested an Ayurvedic doctor, a qualified Ayurvedic Pandit, to be present when we administered the psychometric test that I was developing, as well as for her to identify if the person was Vata, Pitta, Kapha, whatever, or a combination of doshas. And then the person's answer was tallied to make sure that the Ayurvedic interpretation of the person, assessment of the person, as well as my assessment of the person through the psychometric test was equal and same. So in this way, I developed the psychometric test for the Mysore Tridosha scale. It was so named because I did my PhD in Regional Institute of Education, which is NCRT in Mysore University, and I got my degree from Mysore University, my PhD degree. So it was named as the Mysore Tridosha scale. So it has 51 questions, and they're all in multiple choice questions. So each question has 3 alternatives, and a person can choose whichever is most similar to them, and they also have to rate it. The same way, I developed the Triguna scale, which has 63 items, again, all multiple choice questions. And then it was called as the Mysore Triguna scale. There were some questions which I could not include in either the Tridosha or the Triguna, the main Tridosha or the Triguna test, but which were very essential for us to understand the person, understand the psyche of the individual. So that was put into I developed a third test called as the Mysore Triguna scale part B. And these questions with yes, no, and ratings were included over there. So these were all standardized scales, and both the Tridosha test and the Triguna scale, the Mysore Tridosha scale and the Mysore Triguna scale, were independent psychometric tests. So you can answer them and get independent results independently. The Triguna scale part B is an add-on. It cannot be used independently. So this was, the data was collected on a sample size of 1,500 plus. We collected the data from about 2,000 people, but then due to different, restrictions, we had to remove them because some of them were sick. Someone had OCD, someone had some other mental issues. So all these kind of, the data of these kind of people was excluded, and we included only the people's data who we found were a good, proper, study and things like that. And this underwent a lot of statistical analysis. We had to use unconventional means to adapt because Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas and Vata, Pitta, Kapha are on a continuum, if you look at it in one perspective, from the statistical analysis perspective. So that we hit a roadblock over there, and we needed to use different kinds of statistical analysis to prove, to even understand what we were trying to, prove and things like that. So this underwent multiple rounds of, work and analysis and so on. And then this led to this has led to now about 17 publications in international journals. So I was able to establish the reliability, multiple types of reliability and validity. Validity was by showing it to the scholars and everybody. And we have been able to develop 3 main questionnaires. Which assesses the 10 types of doshas, 10 types of gunas, 16 classical personality types, as well as the 189 traits. We also developed a short version of the Tridosha and the Triguna scale, because the long version takes about 1 hour for a person to completely answer. And we needed a shorter version because not everybody was interested in answering the 1 hour questionnaires. So I have been able to see that and demonstrate multiple applications of these tests. With students, we're able to identify the behavioral challenges that they face, leading to helping them to develop their personality better, career guidance and SWOT analysis for undergraduate students. With corporates, we've been working in the area of recruitment, talent assessment, as well as employee engagement and development. And in yoga, to help the yoga teacher identify the prakriti of the individual, because to identify the prakriti, the Ayurvedic doctor does a pulse analysis. And pulse analysis is a very tough thing to do. And these doctors undergo 5 years of training to do that. But yoga teachers don't get 5 years of training. They barely get about 20 hours, 50 hours, 100 hours of training, before which they call themselves yoga teachers. And with that, they're not able to assess the prakriti of an individual. So we felt that that would be a huge area for us to also work with them, so that, and if you look at Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, he very clearly specifies what kind of asanas and pranayama a person with what kind of gunas should be performing and not performing as well to stay healthy, which unfortunately is lost in today's day and age, when we are all very competitive in our yoga, because we say, I look at my neighbor who's doing headstands and I want to do the same. May not be very good thing for me to do at all. So marketing and sales is another area that we are exploring. And matrimonial, that is to understand the relationship compatibility of people, whether other than your, Vedic astrology and so on and so forth, the family status, educational compatibility and so on. There's also something known as, understanding whether the person is even compatible with me mentally or not. And that's another area where I've been able to, add some value. And research, of course. Here, I want to, throw up a couple of case studies to everybody, if we can have some interaction. So for career guidance and recruitment, what is the kind of, so the person on the left is, a stable, methodical, oriented person, while the one on the right is a very creative, high energy kind of a person. So these are the characteristics that I've put out, very simple ones, which are easy for everybody to understand. So what is the kind of, jobs or courses that the person on the left can do? They would be most suitable, it would be more suitable for them to undertake desk jobs like a CA or an administrative kind of a role, rather than getting into sales, marketing, or, something like that, or even a leadership role, because they would not be able to do well. And that kind of work would stress them out tremendously. If you look at the person on the right, they are a very creative, high energy kind of a person, very original thinking. So they would do well in sports, sales, marketing, creative areas, things like that. And if you try to put them into a desk job area, that they would be miserable, because they like to move around. They like to constantly think. They like to constantly interact with people. So putting them in a desk job in front of a system would make them really very upset. So in this way, we've been able to identify the different kinds of job roles that a person would be good at performing, and have also done the collateral studies and identified the same, reinforced the same with our outreach work. So this was another application that we have done, where we were working with a company in India. Obviously, I can't name the company. It's a multinational company, and they wanted to find their, hire the India head. So we got the they got about 4 or 5 people to take the tests. 2 of them were disqualified due to some other reason. We don't do skills assessment, of course. We only do a psychometric study of the person. So this was, they wanted to find the country head for India. It was $1 billion MNC. And it was a new position that they were creating so that the person could handle the design, manufacture, and execution in India. It's originally from it's a European company. So the person, this was the brief that we got about the person, what they should be able to do. And based on that, they sent us 3 people. I have 4 people. I have their, the names are not mentioned, of course. So their traits are mentioned over here. So I'm going to take you through this. I'll give you a minute for you to go through this. And then you can tell me, on the chat, if somebody could monitor that and tell me, who do you think would have been the best person to be hired to the job role? And then I will tell you which one was hired and why so, and how that person is performing now. So this is person number 1. I'll go to the next slide. This is person number 2. So please remember, they have to be the head, the India head for the company. I'm going to the next slide. Person number 3. I'm going to the next slide. This was person number 4. I'm going back to show you the requirement from the company. Now, can you put it out in the chat as to who you think was hired? Sai Sambaji, if you can just help me out with this, the answers from people.
Yes, we are getting so far 4 responses, all saying number 3, person number 3. There are more coming. Mostly 3, 1 saying 2. Yeah.
Okay, so that's amazing. The person number 3 was hired, and I'm really thrilled that all of you could pick that up. So many people ask me, okay, this is based on Vedic knowledge system. You're going to have lots of Sanskrit words and things like that. Nobody can understand. But I think we've been able to successfully show that, even with just a little bit of information, all of you are able to see that person number 3 was, chosen for the job. And secondly, what we also did was to hire his, I'm saying his, her, very loosely, hired their second round of employees, because the company also wanted to make sure that the next in command, the entire team, would work well with the head of the company. So we were able to, from the existing pool of talent that they already had and whom they wanted to promote and things like that, we were able to identify people who would work well with this individual and give them that list after they took the test, of course. So this has been about 2 years, 2.5, 3 years now. And the company has been very, very successful. It's become, almost they've doubled their, employee as well as revenue in the last 3-4 years now, more than doubled, in fact. So essentially at Swayam, that's we work based on the Indic 5-element theory of personality and analysis. We've combined that with the modern psychometric methodology, and we assess people on the physiological, psychological, and ethical aspects of behavior, combining it with data and psychometric and statistical analysis to identify the dominant nature, the physiological nature, the psychological attribute, as well as the ethical orientation of a person for multiple proven analytical areas. It's based on more than 12 years of research, and I was awarded my PhD based on this work from Mysore University, 17+ paper publications, and a knowledge advisory with 2 Padma Shri awardees, vice chancellors, and professors of multiple universities. We have 1 patent, 8 copyrights, and 3 trademarks that we've applied for. And it's also, the tests have also been accredited by Indian Institute of Business Psychology. If there are any questions, I would be very happy to take them up.
Yeah, Shilpa ji, there's one question, which is, are these traits what your Mysore scale tracks? I think this question came just before you shared that slide, but nevertheless, you can.
Yeah. What was the question again?
Yeah, yes. Are these traits what your Mysore scale tracks?
Yes, it's they're all part of the Mysore Tridosha and Triguna scales. Any other questions?
No, there is. I'll keep tracking of that. So somebody is saying about hiring talent. What is the thing? So I think my guidance to that person will be to look at this current slide, which is having the contact details. So can you, Shilpa ji, can you share your last slide where your contact information is there? So once that is done, I think whoever wants that, they can take. There are multiple questions coming now.
Any other questions that I could answer?
Yeah, can you explain how did the India version is different from, say, foreign parameters? That's another question. So can you just...
Oh, there's no difference in the India version or the foreign parameters. It's the same. It's absolutely the same. So the physiological test, when I say the Mysore Tridosha scale, the physiological test, the scale, what we did is to eliminate all questions related to skin color, hair, skin texture, body build, bone structure, things like that, because those are very, very subjective. So what I did was to eliminate those that are subjective and only included questions related to traits that are very objective in their assessment, which we can assess objectively. So because of which we had to also do a lot more analysis, and that's how we assess the physiological aspect of the person and not the pure physical aspect of the person. There's a loose, interplay over there. So that's how we are able to, and the gunas, of course, they are completely psychological, so there was no issue with that. So these are accepted and used by scientists worldwide. It's being used in multiple countries for research. other than in India, which proves that, it's able to understand people worldwide. If you look at Ayurveda and yoga, they are worldwide phenomena. You don't have a yoga only for India or a yoga only for the US or Japan or something like that. Yoga is being practiced by people across the world, and you're getting comparative results. For whatever yoga you practice, nobody can say that, did not have an effect on you. To some extent, positive effect, I mean. It will definitely have a positive effect on you, provided you're able to do the yoga based on your prakriti. So there have been instances of negative effect, but that I believe very strongly are only because you're practicing yoga, which you should not be doing because of, based on your prakriti. So it's the doshas and gunas are applicable to people across the world. Ayurveda and yoga have proved that to us, if not anything else.
Okay. Shilpaji, there is a question from one Sri Sagarji. He's checking whether is there any association with this 16 personality type with Swayam MBTI 16 personality, or is it just a coincidence?
No, yeah. So it's just a coincidence that both of them are 16. But the 16 classical personality types, these are as explained in Charaka and Sushruta Samhita. This is in no way related to the 16 PF from the West at all. I think it's just a coincidence that both of them are 16 and 16. So this is completely based on the Indian, the Ayurveda tradition. Charaka and Sushruta Samhita. It's all there. Anybody can go and see.
There is a question from Sanjeev Kumarji. He's asking, has anyone done any comparative study of this with Myers-Briggs test, which is the MBTI?
Yes, it has been done, and it was found that the Swayam tests, the Mysore Tridosha and the Triguna tests are more in-depth. And the MBTI, I don't know how familiar you are with it, but if I take the MBTI today, then I might be a ENTJ. And then I take it a week later, I might be IFTJ or something like that. So there's a lot of difference in one person when they take it multiple times, which goes on to show that the reliability or the validity of the tool is not very strong. Because if you look at it from your own perspective, you as a person will not change over a week or 10 days. If I have to change, if anybody has to change, then the change has to be sustained. The behavior has to be very cognizant. The person has to be very aware, has to make a lot of effort, and to inculcate the change and modify their behavior. To give you a very small story, if I may, do I have the time to do a small story?
Yeah, please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm not getting into any political discussion or anything religious, anything like that. But I'm sure many of you would have heard of Rishi Vishwamitra and Rishi Vashishta. Both of them were Maharishis. So Vishwamitra was a Kshatriya. He was a king who then later, became a Rishi because he moved into more of a spiritual area. At one point of time, there was, Vishwamitra got angry at some incident, and then he lost his temper and cursed the person. At that point of time, it is still believed in the Indian philosophical tradition that when you get angry and you curse somebody, you lose all the spiritual merit that you would have gained through your long course of, adherence to spirituality, meditation, and so on and so forth. But Vishwamitra was able to become a rishi only after thousands of years of tapas and meditation and, seeking God and so on. So, but in one moment, he lost all that because he got angry. Vishwamitra was a Kshatriya. He was, somebody who tended to get angry a lot. And then the minute he uttered the curse, he realized that, he had fallen down in his own eyes, because that is not what was expected of him as a Brahmana. Again, not getting into religious or anything like that or political discussions over here, just a story. So he felt that, he went back and he did another tapas for another 1,000 of years to get rid of his anger. So if you taking just that one aspect from this small story. So if I want to change my behavior, if I want to change my personality, then I have to do it very mindfully with a lot of willpower, and I have to practice it day in and day out for years together for me to modify my behavior. So if there is a test that tells me that I'm one thing today, another thing tomorrow, and another thing 1 week later, then obviously it's not assessing my personality at all, because personality is constant. It is built. A personality develops at the time you are conceived in your mother's womb. It doesn't change over the course of your life. It remains constant. You can modify behavior, you can modify personality, but not change it. That's my very strong belief. So if a person, but if you look at the Indian tradition, we say that the person can evolve from one place to the other. Doesn't mean that that aspect is not there in him or her. There is always evolution, constant evolution. So if you look at MBTI and the Mysore Dosha and the Triguna scale, that's the difference. Our Cronbach alpha reliability is at 0.965 and so on, which is one of the highest in the world. I'm not very sure about MBTI, but I think it's in the range of 0.5 or 6 or something like that. So the reliability, when you take any test, for assessments, for psychometric assessments, whether in companies, whether in organizations, or in school setting, or any other setting for that matter, it's very important for you to see, one is if there is research backing it. Second is if the test has been standardized on a population on which you intend to use it going forward, and to see how good the test is, whether it will give you comparable results. So unless these things are not there, and paper publications, of course, unless these things are not there, it would be a disaster to use a test just because it's being very well marketed all over the world, and it may not really serve the purpose at all at the end of the day. I hope that answers your question, sir, ma'am, whoever asked it. Sai Sambuji, you're on mute.
Yeah, let's look at other questions. So there's one which is checking whether this can, assess the Swabhava. Look at the Swabhava of the person.
Yes, Swabhava, it does assess.
Yeah, so it's identifying the Swabhava of the individual, and so that it can help him or her plan his or her career. This is from Sri Ram Gopalji. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
So can you just, so can you just give an example from, say, what you do as SWOT for the, students, and you were saying that even including helping preparing the statement of purpose in case of going abroad. Some such, and we have time, so some anecdotal, this thing will help people to connect and relate also.
Sure. So in India, what happens is our students, our children are not taught very well to understand themselves, to understand what they feel, to get a pulse of their feeling, what their emotions, and what they want in life. Because we strongly believe, have believed till now, that most families tell the children what they should be doing. So that value of asking the child, what do you want to do? How do you see yourself going forward, is lost over many centuries, unfortunately. So what happens is, when we are working with students, when we tell them about their physiological, their psychological behavior, and what is it that they would really be happy to do. Because if you look at this, if the person on the left was made to get into, a creative kind of a job, first is they're not creative oriented. They would find it very difficult to match up to somebody else who's very creative. So therein you've already brought in stress, anxiety in the person, that they're not up to the mark. You're asking a frog to, a fish to climb a tree, which is really impossible to do. So what we essentially do is to hold a mirror to the person's mind and tell them, this is who you are. This is who you will do really well at. And that's when the child says that this is exactly what I want to do. Can you please tell my mom, or can you please tell my dad that this is what I want to do? Because most often in India, it's the parents' dreams which are thrust onto the child, and the child is told, you have to become an engineer because I wasn't able to do one, or you have to become a doctor because everybody in our family is a doctor, so on and so forth. That kind of pressure on the child is immense. So when we step in, most often we are talking to the parents to tell them, to counsel them to allow their child to be who they are. And that's the most difficult part, because children are very resilient. They find that, this is what I want to do. I'll be happy to do that. So we identify the traits, we identify the strengths of the child, and we tell them. We also identify the behavioral challenges that they might be facing. And because of which, once they overcome that, they have a very well-developed personality. And we give them resources also in our reports. It could be videos that they can watch on YouTube, or, podcasts that they can listen to, books that they can read, which will help them to build and overcome their negative traits. When we look at undergraduate students, we help them to know what their strengths and weaknesses are, because they don't know that. Most of the students in India are not aware. So we help them identify that, and we give them the means to overcome their weaknesses, their inhibitor traits, their enabler traits. And if they're able to find jobs wherein, each job has a description as to what are the kind of traits the person needs to have to execute those jobs. So if this person spends just 2 minutes looking at the job description and compares themselves to that, they will know whether they are suitable for the job or not. Skills is a separate issue. Skills can be taught at any point of time, but personality cannot be changed. So if they have the necessary traits, the necessary psyche to be able to do that job, then one is that when they sit for the interview, they're able to talk about themselves comfortably, very well, and put themselves across in a better position, in a better way. And this is going to help them land the job. Secondly, we also found that many of the students who are wanting to go abroad for their higher education have to write statement of purpose essays. And again, because of the lack of understanding of our own selves in India, students find that very difficult. So when they saw this report, when we started explaining their report to them, when we gave them their report and told them, this is your, is this how you feel you are? And most of the times, though I'm able to promise at least about 80% accuracy in the report, most of our clients come back and tell us that it's about 95, 98% accurate, which is, I feel very happy to hear that. So when we explain their report to them and we tell them, take them through the whole thing, they're able to see, what is it that they can write in their statement of purpose essays, because they need to talk about themselves. They need to tell them why they tell the university why they want to do that course and things like that. So when they are able to talk about themselves well, automatically it comes out in the report. Their passion, their requirement, the why they want to do that course comes out very well in the report. And because of which one of our students got into Stanford, one got into Dale Carnegie. And, we saw that value that we were able to bring to the student community. So I think that was a great, way that we could support students there.
There are two questions on the corporate side. Okay. One is, can this scale and test be used to work in alignment with competency framework, which is already, say, existing in an organization?
Yes,
has
we
there
have
been any
built
experience on?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that last bit?
No, the question is, these organizations follow the competency framework and competency map and all that. So the question is there any connect, complementarity, supplementarity, something around that?
Yes. We've already built our framework, competency framework, where we identified about 22 competencies. And then we've clubbed them under business, self and people competencies. So like the heading only, they deal with how the person would do in a business or a work environment, how they would interact with people, and how they see themselves as. So again, in that also we identify their strengths, their weaknesses, give them resources to overcome their weaknesses, and help them to identify, what is it that they need to do to overcome them also. So, and that's comparable to what you get in any other psychometric test worldwide. And we've been able to achieve that quite well. Yes.
Yeah, the second one is on, can this be used, or this used for, say, giving pink slips?
Pink slips, yes, that's something we have been exploring, because we've been able to identify people, bad apples in an organization. So that was a requirement that we got just recently, a few weeks ago, where if from companies where they found that, they needed people who were really ethical, areas like cybersecurity, in, AI and ML research, in biotech research and all that, they found that there were companies with IP, intellectual property. They found that, there was somebody who was leaking their information. They had lots of issues. So they wanted us to see the psychometric, do the psychometric assessment and see which ones are the ones who are creating problems in the organizations, who are slacking off, and because of which there's a lot of negativity that was developing. So we have been working with a couple of organizations in that area as well. Yes, pink slips is one area we're working on.
The other question is, how does this the Triguna Tridosha scale compare with the Big Five personality assessment?
Okay, so the Big Five personality assessment identifies only the 5 major traits of a person. One is neuroticism. So four positive and 1 negative. They have built a whole lot of framework around that, of course, where they are able to assess multiple things. But predominantly, it's about 5 main categories, so 5 main traits of the person. Whereas from the Indian methodology, we have 189 traits, we have 10 Tridosha types, 10 Triguna types, and then the 16 classical personality types. So I think it's a much more deeply evolved kind of a classification that we have compared to the Big Five. And the Big Five also has its own limitation. It cannot be used for recruitment. It can only be used in certain scenarios, things like that. So I think it's completely different. We are comparing apples and oranges, but there is some, just because it's psychometric, I feel that you can't compare one against the other. Having said that, there are some overlaps over there, but not many.
Yeah, there's another question on the difference between the Mysore Tridosha scale and the Watson Tridosha scale. If you are aware of the Watson Tridosha scale, can you shed some light on?
Which one is that? Watson, is it?
Watson Tridosha scale. The person is, if you are aware, you may.
No, I'm not aware of that at all. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Okay. Now there is something on Swabhava, slightly more nuanced on the Swabhava side. I'll read it out, then we can look at it. But it's an interesting. Just give me a sec.
Sure.
Yeah, for example, this is Ram Gopalji. I think he has asked that Swabhava question earlier. For example, Prahlada was born to Rakshasa Swabhava father, but he was corrected in the womb by Narada and changed the Swabhava from Rakshasa to Devata. So is it possible to work on prenatal and then certify Swabhava and guide him or his profession or interest?
Yeah. So if you look at Prahlada, it was completely a different kind of an environment, because he was preordained to, I think God was there and things like that, and he was preordained to, overcome the Asuric Swabhava. Secondly, Narada gave that kind of instruction when Prahlada was still in his mother's womb. So that is where our samskaras and all that come in, Garbha samskara, and so on, those come in. The reason that they are done for a pregnant lady is so that, the child within hears that. And there have been plenty of researches lately that you can read up on the internet that says that, the child is able to recognize the voice of the father, the voice of the mother, and the kind of music and that you play when the child is still in the mother's womb. They all have a very strong effect on the mind and the psyche of the child. That's being proved very scientifically lately in the last 10, 20 or so years now. So going back to Prahlada, of course, I think, he was able to do that because of the Garbha samskaras that he got from such a sage like Narada. And I'm sure he must have, the mother also must have been very influential in the kind of food that she ate, the kind of things that she was exposed to, so on and so forth. So he was able to overcome. Again, over here, if you see, the taxonomy plays a role over here. Since the time he was even conceived, so the thoughts that the mother had, the kind of things that he was, Prahlada was exposed to as an embryo, as a, as a baby in his mother's womb, all had a lot of effect. So when he was out, when he was born, all these things started taking an effect, and he was able to overcome his baser instincts, probably much more easily, much more better than anybody else who would not have received that kind of support and infrastructure. So I think that kind of samskaras are very important, and how you treat the child from the time they are, even conceived is also highly important for you to help the child to overcome the baser instincts and come up to be more evolved. Does that answer your question, sir?
I suppose so, but if you are talking about prenatal and all that, it's a different thing. It's the person and I think the kind of people who take your test must be at least of some age where the personality has taken some kind of a shape. So obviously, that is being talked about the Shodasha samskaras and how they have impact. So of course, that's about correction rather than a post facto kind of a thing. So,
yes.
See the other question, the question on the pink slip again. The supplementary question to that is, can then, if it's going to be used for pink slip and all that, will Swayam and its test be prone to being misused or by corporates and all that? So there is a question on that, on the ethical angle.
I didn't understand the question clearly.
No, that if you are saying that it can be used for pink slips and identifying and all that, so what is the safeguard in terms of it being misused in the corporate setting? Is the
of course. So that will have to be there has to be a lot of processes in place before it can be fully rolled out in any organization. I think we will have to take the help from the legal team as well to see how it can be done. It cannot be a unitary, arbitrary decision to let go of somebody like that. But it definitely has applications in that area. That's all I mentioned.
So there is one question on its application beyond corporate into sports and armed forces and all that. So if you can share some details of what you do with the police and all that, it will be helpful.
Yeah, so with the police, I was on their interviewing committee. So I didn't do any, except during my PhD research, I didn't sit and do any test analysis with them. That's not allowed. So I was only on the interview committee over there. But it would be great if they can use the test because we're using it with other organizations. Similarly, it's a government organization. So to use it to identify people who would suit the job rather than somebody who wouldn't would be great. So during my PhD, I had studied the personality of teachers and professors. The second group of that was one group. The second group was police officers. The third group was IT professionals. And then we had another group which with engineers, doctors, lawyers, everybody into that. It was a hodgepodge group. So at that point of time, I was able to very clearly, and that's again a published paper, very clearly show that the personality of people who are in the police job, who are in that kind of a job, is very different from that of an IT person or even that of a teacher. So we don't want personality. You don't want a teacher with a personality of a policeman teaching students. Nor do you want it vice versa, because everything would go to dogs at that point of time. So I think it's very important to understand who you are and then work in that area so that you can, one is that you are more mentally satisfied and happy doing the kind of job that you want to do, that you have a natural inclination and an aptitude for, a swabhava for, rather than doing something by force where it is going to create stress and anxiety on you and put you under tremendous pressure the rest of your life. You don't get that satisfaction that you're doing something that you're meant to do, that gives you that happiness that you want. Does that answer your question, sir? Ma'am?
Because nobody's coming back to, at least some people have talked about Subhava, then they came back with the supplementary question. But no, the other part is that in terms of the dangers or the pitfalls of stereotyping is a question which has come up, especially, of course, the 1,000-year penance to change the personality kind of thing on a Vishwamitra kind of scale will not be possible in modern times. So the question is in terms of what are the pitfalls of stereotyping or something that can emerge from this?
There is no stereotyping over here. No, we're not stereotyping anybody over here. We give you that option. So it's up to you whether you want to take that option or not. Everybody has a free will over here. So it's not as if we are putting them into boxes and saying, this is only what you can do, don't do anything else. So we are revealing who you are to you. And then you are, of course, you are at will to take whatever step you want to take. You are at liberty to take whatever step you want to take, how you want to shape your life. There is no stereotyping over here.
There are two questions, one from Yogini ji and there's one more. So they are asking, suppose there is a Swabhava has been identified. So what is the scope of it being, say, altered, it being, say, changed or modified? Is there any light on that in terms of research or experience? If you could share that, that would be helpful.
Yeah. So Swabhava has been identified. One is the Swabhava should be identified by the person themselves. This is my Swabhava. I like to eat this. I don't like to do that. Whatever it is. So that is, self-analysis of the Swabhava. What we do is to help you. We show you a mirror and tell you who you are. We show you who you are, what you're capable of. What is it that is going to make you very fulfilled in life? So that is something that you know, that you have. Based on that, it depends completely upon you how you want to shape yourself. Now, let's say that you want to be an engineer. You really want to be an engineer, but you may not have the aptitude for it. But if you still feel that you're going to go in and take the necessary skills, undergo classes, you're going to do the necessary, build the necessary skills for you to become an engineer, that's totally your choice. You will have to put in that extra effort. But then you can be an engineer. Nobody's stopping you from doing that. But look at the, I might be very good at engineering. It might come easily to me and I might enjoy it. But because somebody else wants to do it, they will have to put in a lot more effort to do it and to become what they want to do. So there's nobody stopping you or anything, but the kind of effort, and then how happy are you going to be at the end of the day? Are you going to be somebody, an engineer who's, on par with the best? Or are you going to be struggling to reach there? Or will you be even better than them? That's completely dependent upon you as an individual, the kind of effort that you put in and what you want to achieve in the end. So that again comes back to that whole discussion about free will and, premediation. That, that's a eons long debate that's been going
on. Shri Vinzi Mehta has requested you to name and describe the doshas and gunas again. You can go to that slide one more time.
So these are the doshas. Vata, Pitta and Kapha. These are the three main doshas. So these three, they combine with each other to give you the 10 different doshas. So this is Vata and Kapha dosha. This is Kapha and Vata dosha. Similarly, you have Kapha and Pitta and you have Pitta and Kapha. So there's a difference. Kapha and Pitta, there is one kind of person, one type of individual, while Pitta and Kapha is another type. So in one, the Kapha is dominant, in one, the Pitta is more dominant, though they are almost on an equal footing. And then you have the Pitta Vata and the Vata Pitta. And then the one in the center is one who has all the three doshas in equilibrium, all three in sama dosha, so that's how you get the 10 different doshas. Similarly, you have the gunas also, sattva, rajas and tamas, and the 10 different combinations. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and the one in the center, that is the 10, which is in equilibrium. So you have 10 doshas and the 10 gunas, and all of them, both of them are always intercorrelated to each other.
There's another question on how was the test result correlated with the examination by the Ayurvedic physicians. Could you please elaborate on that?
So the Ayurvedic doctor who had come in, so she analyzed the dosha and not the guna, the dosha of the individual, and the individual had answered the tests that was being developed by me. So we did a correlation, again a statistical correlation of the two, and we found that the concordance was more than 80%. So anything more than 60% is considered to be same as per the statistical psychometric tenets. So that is why we were able to come to the conclusion that both of them are measuring the same things. This was also administered in SDM College of Ayurveda in Udupi, and we got the similar results over there also. So that's both of them are again published in my research papers. So we've been able to prove that what they're assessing in Ayurveda, that is the doshas, is the same as what we are assessing in the Mysore dosha scale developed by me.
There is another question from the same person. Let me read it out. This looks more technical. So, also, how can psychological traits be correlated with physical traits? How is it different from subjects like phrenology?
Subject like?
Phrenology. P-H-R-E, phrenology. N-O-L-O-G-Y.
Okay, I am not sure what phrenology is, but the as far as how we can correlate the psychological traits and the physiological characteristics. So the physiological characteristics give you certain kinds of behavior. Like if you're a kapha dominant individual, then you tend to be slow, you tend to be a little lazy, you tend to prefer 9-to-5 kind of desk jobs, and so on and so forth. In the same way, if you are a kapha dominant person, is also more tamasic as well as sattvic also. So there is a combination over there. So not everything is equal. This is equal to this can never be said. There's always blends and there's always permutations and combinations. So when we are able to assess the physiological aspect of the person as well as the psychological aspect, we do an intercorrelation over there. So one is put on top of the other, and then we see what are the most common things that we are able to find between the physiology and the psychology. So when we are able to do that, we can see that, certain physiological aspects of an individual gives rise to certain psychological traits that is very characteristic in them. That's how we are able to do the mapping and interpretation. Somebody's raised their hand, so.
Yeah, but I don't know how to. We don't have an active participation yet. So if that person types in the question only, we'll be able to.
Okay.
So I'll request Indrajit G to type, type in the question, please, because we don't have that facility to admit people and. Shilpa ji, if we can go back to that, 16 traits, personality traits. No, the 16, yeah, right. Now, in terms of, so let's now, so let's look at these 16 personality traits, and then let's look at what leadership, lessons, or what about leadership can be, derived from this. You have already mentioned it in the right-hand side. So can you just explain that? Because what are the leadership insights in terms of whether it is corporate or non-profit or wherever? So because you have said, your case study also, you said 4 types of leadership combinations, and then the right fit for the role kind of thing. So can you just explain this a bit more from a leadership angle, please?
Sure. So any organization, when they're looking for leaders, at least till now whom we have worked with, they all want somebody who is very ethical, who is able to lead teams, who's able to take quick decisions, and can build the entire, take the company and the organization forward. So if you look at Indra is Indra. If you look at Indra Sattva or Yamya Sattva, and Varuna Sattva, these three, predominantly it is these three kind of individuals along with Asura and Rakshasa Sattva kind of a personality. So like I mentioned, it's not that, you are only Brahma Sattva, but you are not Preta Sattva or something else. Or you're only Asha is Rishi. You're only Asha Sattva and you're not Asura Sattva or Rakshasa Sattva. There's no Rakshasa Sattva in you. It can never be like that, because all of us are combinations of Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas in us. So when we see the combinations of people from the 16 classical personality types, so we see, I have seen that Asha, Indra, and Yama and Varuna, not Asha, sorry, Indra, Yama, and Varuna Sattva in combination with Asura and Rakshasa have given the best kind of leaders. Because the Rajasic kind of a personality is one who is very, aggressive. They're very passionate. They're kind of, they take the person forward. They take the company forward. They take people with them, pull people along with them and take them forward. Meanwhile, these are the ones which give you the ethical orientation. They're giving you the critical thinking skills. They're able to think about, forethought, how to take things forward, strategize. Those things are what the Sattvic Manobhava people are very good at. Whereas the Rajasic ones are very good at leadership qualities. Not that these don't have, but they're very, passionate kind of leaders. So I have seen that combination of people gives you the best kind of a leader to take the company and the organization forward. Brahma Sattva is somebody, again, who is, very oriented towards teaching, towards meditation, spiritual practices. Asha is again very good at teaching. Brahma and Asha both make very good teachers, very good professors, and those are the kind of people we want to have in educational institutes, whether schools or colleges, things like that. So that has been my experience so far.
Yeah, there's a one specific question on, can you please explain this Vanaspatya Sattva? There's a specific query on.
Yeah, Vanaspatya Sattva is somebody who is very, somebody who just accepts whatever is done, not very creative in their thought, is not very strong-willed, doesn't bother much about anything that is happening around them, is not able to understand the ramifications of things, environmental changes. Environment, I mean, not just the physical environment, but also the political situation, the family dynamics, and strategize how they can evolve, how they can come up in life. So that kind of understanding is very limited in a Vanaspatya Sattva dominant individual. So they are the followers, very, to very crudely say, they are the followers. They don't lead anybody. They are not able to take good decisions, very cloudy in their thinking, very obstructive, and also at one point of time, they just don't know what to do to take things forward, what to do to go forward in life. So that's, a Vanaspatya Sattva kind of a person. Again, I'm giving you very gross, kind of a definition, kind of an understanding, because for me to go into the nuances will be very difficult on this call, on this webinar.
No, I think the indicative, the directional thing would be what would be helpful. So if you look at the way, if I can paraphrase, if you look at the Rajasic, 6 of them, they bring in the action orientation in terms of passion and energy and all that goes in terms of execution, and then willpower and making things happen on scale and on this thing. And on the Sattvic attributes or the traits will bring in that, as you said, the forethought and the equivalence and for example emotional stability, maturity, that kind of stuff. So empathy. We are looking at combination of that to look at what would leaders. Be the
yes.
Right.
Yes.
So what I would request you, Shilpa ji, is just show your last slide where your contact details are there. Let's flash it for a while, then we'll take off the presentation and get into a conversational mode and close. Yeah. Because multiple people have, somebody said, can they do the test on themselves? Somebody has said whether they can join as a research, join you in research, all that. So let them get in touch with you.
Yeah, they can get in touch with me. We'll interact with them. Not a problem.
So those of you who have asked for queries, the queries where it needs further, information exchange and dialogue with Shilpa ji, please note down these details and then. Yeah. So Shilpa ji, can you stop sharing the screen and then let's get into this.
Yes.
One question I have is your transition from, say, being an academic and academic research and all that into an entrepreneur, in terms of that, starting a Swayam Analytics, and how, and also in terms of how has been the receptivity and all that, and your own journey, in making this and taking it, bringing it this far. That will be very.
Yeah.
That will be. We look forward to that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, like I mentioned in the beginning, I started this working in this area because of my son. And the intention was to develop tests that could help me to, or help people to identify children at a younger age. And then once I started doing this work, I realized that, the baseline itself was not there. Understanding people based on the Tridosha Triguna aspect itself was not there. So I moved into that area and I developed these tests to understand Tridoshas and Trigunas, which I've been able to accomplish. The second thing that I also was very clear was I didn't want to develop a test that would be only useful to people in Bangalore, in Karnataka, in South India, things like that. Because if you look at physics, chemistry, mathematics, they're all universal laws. Whatever is there in the physics that we study in India is exactly the same as the physics that you study in US or Europe or Japan or anywhere for that matter. But it's only with relation to psychology that it's very fractured. You have so many different theories of psychology, Western psychology, and even if you try to put them all together to make a whole, it's not possible because they're all at loggerheads with each other. And that was my intention. I said, when people are the same across the world, there should be some way that we can understand all of them, wherever in the world they are sitting in. Just because, we follow the same laws of the earth, of nature, as anything else. So it was that started me on this journey. And since I wanted to help people, the obvious thing for me was to see how I could take it out into the public. And I very strongly feel that anything that you do today has to benefit mankind and humanity, without which it's of no use. And knowledge is meant to be spread out. Knowledge is meant to, to better human life. And if that is not there, then I think we have failed. So with that intention, because I didn't want it lying in a library, in a dusty library gathering dust, I said, how can I bring it out and, make it into something that can be used by people to better their lives and their children's lives. And today the world is completely online. So it was a natural progression for me to develop the tests as a software. And then, of course, we need to take care of, making sure that the intellectual property is protected and so on. So I applied for the patent and copyrights and everything. So now the software is completely online and we are able to give immediate reports to the people. And so we're able to commercialize it.
Okay.
As well
I think I'm very,
scientists.
Yeah, very glad to, the idea is to take it and make it available, because many times the richness of our wisdom, is not, it's made available, propagated. So I can see probably in you, probably your test itself must be showing a combination of a good element of sattva and rajas bringing in this action orientation.
Unfortunately, I cannot take the test because I've developed it. I'm so biased. Okay. So I cannot be honest in taking it. So I've not tried to do that.
Okay. Anyway, that was, and what I'm saying is the way you are coming,
yes,
the very fact that you bring in that drive and tenacity to take it to, bring it online and go for the appropriate protection, intellectual protection, is wonderful. And we are at the end of the hour. So thank you very, very much, Shilpa ji. Very interactive. The nature of questions, the kind of interactions, and the kind of questions and the follow-up questions, it was a very, very rich session for the people who have attended, as well as to me personally. Very glad that we could put it together in such a short time. We have just started interacting in less than a month's time, and given the direction Institute of Indic Wisdom is taking, and our commitment is to contemporize Indic wisdom and take it to all corners of the globe. I think our association will continue, and let us see what we can build together. And
Sure.
once again, thank you very much. My apologies to those people who raised hands and wanted to join the session, by joining us in the conversation. We are not factored in for that. We will look at the technicalities and then try and incorporate that in the future session if it is possible from our side. And thanks to every participant for joining in the conversation, raising very interesting and thoughtful questions. And with that,
Thank you very much, Sai Samvad-ji, and thank you very much to IIW also for having me over. And thank you to all the participants for the wonderful questions that you asked. It showed that you were, you're very keen, and it's always nice to have people ask you questions because they're interested in your work. So thank you very much, and I do hope this, association continues. Thank you.
We will close with a closing invitation. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.